Today we have with us Dr. Pratibha Brahmi. She is a principal scientist and officer in charge of the Germplasm Exchange and Policy Planning Unit of NBPGR. She's joined ICR as a scientist in the year 1985, and her specialization is economic botany, germplasm exchange, policy and IPR issues. She has immense contributions to the scientific advancement. She is involved in the processing of applications of ICAR for plant variety protection with the Plant Variety Protection and Farmers' Right Authority of India. She is also involved in processing import and export of plant genetic resources. She is involved in the development of guidelines for exchange of germplasm under the ITPGR FA. Also involved in the development of bilateral MTAs for exchange of germplasm based on SMTA and the Biological Diversity Act 2002. She has developed guidelines for sharing of germplasm with private sector based on current laws, guidelines and procedures. Also, bilateral MTAs for exchange of germplasm based on SMTA and the Biological Diversity Act, and for development of guidelines for sharing of germplasm with private sector based on the current laws, guidelines and procedures. Ma'am has immense advanced exposure in her area of work. She has visited Cambridge for dust testing of plant varieties, then Sweden, Uppsala, Sweden, for the genetic resources and IPRs at University of Agricultural Sciences. She has been the PI, that is principal investigator of the FAO project on monitoring the global plan of action on PGFRA. She is involved in the implementation of the International Treaty on PGRFA in India. Also a member of the expert committee on ABS of the National Biodiversity Authority. Has participated in the third GB of the ITPGRF at Tunisia, where she represented India along with NFP. She has participated in technical expert groups for discussion on simplification of the reporting format for monitoring the second global plan of action for PGFA. So she is immensely knowledgeable, immensely experienced, and I hope you gain a lot from her experience today.
Told this also? Okay. So I thank you, Ira, for this elaborate introduction. I will try to do justice to this topic because you are young students. I want you to know the background of all these things because it is important to know why we have these regulations. Why do we regulate these things? What is the need? Because when these regulations were not there, even then the research using PGRFA or genetic resources was going on. Okay. So what was the factors which led to having these regulations? Okay. So nowadays you see that there is, we are talking a lot about climate change. We are losing genetic resources at a very fast pace. So it is the responsibility of every citizen, whether you are a scientist or not, to at least know why we are losing. We should know the cause and effect of doing such things, what we are doing nowadays. So this realization had already started in the 90s, before 90s also. So that is why the other factor which has led to these developments, so we will be talking of international regulations and what regulations we have in our country matching those international regulations. Okay. So internationally in the 80s and late 80s, the realization had come that we are losing biodiversity at a very fast pace. And also there is a restriction for exchange of germplasm. We started having plant breeders' right. Initially the private sector was involved in developing hybrids. The first maize hybrids were developed by Pioneer Company. They were based in US and they started selling that at a premium price, and also there was a patent on those plant varieties. So US was the first country to have patents on plant varieties. So what that led to was there was a restriction for others not using, not selling those varieties. Okay, so when you have a patent, you can only license or sell it. Okay, so plant variety patents had come at that time, but this has many developed countries then started following that, because these were multinational companies, they spread to many countries, so their rights were exercised in many countries. So there was a historical inequity in sharing of germplasm. The second factor was there were these pharmaceutical companies who were doing the drug discovery. When the scientific advancement was going on, it was lot easier to bioprospect a plant. You know, you take a plant, you analyze all the chemicals present in it. That is called as bioprospecting, and finding what is useful for us. Okay, so and this knowledge they used to base on the traditional knowledge which the people had. Supposing like in Ayurveda, there are many plants which are used for medicines. Okay, and we know that this, like the turmeric case, you all aware, turmeric has healing properties, antiseptic properties. So what if a company, pharmaceutical giant, takes up this plant and isolates the most potent chemical in that turmeric and makes it a drug and sells in the market at a very, very premium price? Okay, so what happens to those people who had this traditional knowledge? Indians had this knowledge. Similarly, there are other examples. In Africa, there is a plant called I just forget the name, but it is used by people who walk in the deserts for a long period of time. It's a cactus. They just suck the juice of that plant and they don't feel hungry, they don't feel thirsty. They can go on walking for miles together. So that traditional knowledge the pharmaceutical company has used for what? You can imagine what? They used for anti-obesity drug. You take a capsule and you will not feel hungry throughout the day and you lose weight. And that is a big market today. Okay, so the person who had this knowledge, the tribal people they didn't get anything, and these are minting money in millions. So the benefit sharing was not happening to what it should. So because the developing countries had the resources and the developed countries had the technologies, so the benefit, it was not happening in the way it should have been. So these international negotiations were made at that time. So first one is the Convention on Biological Diversity. You must have all heard about it. It says that the genetic resources need to be protected, conserved for future generations. Secondly, sustainable use. You cannot just harvest everything and do not leave anything in the nature. You have to use it sustainably so that it is available to our next generation. And third is the sharing of benefit in a fair and equitable way. These two are very meaningful words, fair and equitable. And the second thing CBD did was that the responsibility to conserve and sustainable use of the biological resources occurring in the jurisdiction of a country is the responsibility of the country. Okay, so as a signatory to the CBD, it is our responsibility to conserve and protect our resources. Okay, so they have also given us guidelines how, because no country is self-sufficient in genetic resources. We may need to import or get from other countries. So how that will be done, the guideline is given. It should be based on prior informed consent and mutually agreed terms. So what is the meaning of prior informed consent? Can anybody tell? You are asking me to give you something. I need a prior informed consent. What is the meaning of that? That means you have to tell me what you are going to do with it. Like the example of the cactus I gave you. They took it from the tribal and used it for some other purpose which will never be known to that tribal. So the CBD says that yes, you can do it, but you have to tell what you are going to do with it. You have to show your intentions of what you are doing. Okay, that is prior informed consent. And mutually agreed terms further means that when we give you the resources, we need to have certain benefits. What form those benefits would be, whether it will be financial, whether it will be technology, whether it will be just development of the area, whether some other facility, that is called as mutually. And the other party, you can also, negotiate. No, I am going to invest so much in my research. I cannot give you this much. After research, I may not find anything useful. So all your effort of investing in that research will go waste. So you decide yourself. Both the parties will decide what should be the mutually agreed terms. So these are two important terms to learn. Okay, because these are the instruments of negotiation. When we go to any international forum, you have to follow these. Okay, the second international agreement which affects which we should know is the international treaty. It is very similar to CBD, except it is applicable to only plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. Plant genetic resources and food and agriculture, both, only these two. So CBD is for all of biodiversity, all general biodiversity, that is plants, animal, fishes, microbes, viruses, fungi, bacteria. This is only for PGRFA. Okay, and the other difference between CBD and the treaty is that is a bilateral agreement. When we are negotiating for access, that is between two parties. Okay, whereas this is a multilateral system. What is the meaning of multilateral? That means there are many countries who are signatory. They have they pool the genetic resources. So every country declares that I can share these resources. Okay, and there will be no one-to-one negotiation. The multilateral system, all the parties can access from that system, and whenever there is benefit sharing happening, it will go to a trust fund. It will not go to the individual country. Okay, so that trust fund will be used to fund research in different countries. Okay, so that is the basic difference: bilateral, multilateral, and both these, I forgot to tell, both these are legally binding. And you have to understand the term legally binding. That means if you are a signatory, if a country is a signatory, they have to bring laws into their countries to give effect to that treaty. That means you cannot just say that I have signed, but I will not follow the rules, I will not follow the international standards. So initially treaty was, there was another instrument which was negotiated before CBD, that was called as the international undertaking. That was not legally binding. And many countries who had plant breeding rights, they said we will not share in the multilateral system because their rights were affected. So that is why they had to make it legally binding. And after so many years of negotiation of the international undertaking, it took the form of international treaty. Okay, that is the background. So as I told you, under the international treaty, material is exchanged using a standard material transfer agreement. So no country can have their own MTA. It has to be a uniformly worded material transfer agreement, and so it ensures that all the provisions of the treaty are met. It specifies what is the responsibility of the user, what is the responsibility of the recipient, and how much benefit the percentage he has to share if commercialization happens. So it is uniform across country, whereas in a bilateral agreement, as I told you, we can negotiate between parties. I want to ask for 2%, you say no, 0.5%, but here it is fixed. That is given in the text of the treaty. So when we are exchanging plant genetic resources among different countries, this instrument, which is called as the International Plant Protection Convention. So when we exchange, we do not spread diseases. from one country to another. So this international guideline tells you what measures you should take while exchanging material, whether it is for trade or for research. So they will define that what are the major threats to the plants, what measures you should take before exchanging the material, whether you should use certain chemicals to protect that material, whether you have to phase out certain chemicals. So this international convention defines how we should exchange material for plant health issues. Then under the CBD, because there was biotechnology has progressed so much and different countries are using modified organisms or GM crops, so there has to be a measure of safety when we are using LMOs, because there are scientifically it may not be proven that LMOs are so harmful to the biodiversity, but there are apprehensions in the minds of people that it may tomorrow destroy the biodiversity or affect it in some or the other way. So the use of LMOs has to be regulated. Okay, so this protocol of which is also negotiated under CBD because it affects the biodiversity, this provides set of guidelines for transboundary movement of LMOs. And while exchanging, we have to honor the IPs, because we cannot misuse the intellectual property of the developer, and also the importing countries also has the responsibility that how we should handle. Should we spread it in the environment, should we not? There are guidelines. So giving effect to this, we have our national laws. Then another important agreement is the trade, which is called as the WTO, World Trade Organization. Most of the countries are members of it. The portion which is directly related to genetic resources is an agreement under the WTO, which is called as the TRIPS agreement, which is trade related aspects of intellectual property. That means if a variety or a plant or any technology is patented in a country and it is traded across to another country, the other country should respect those patenting things. Okay, and they also say that the living things also which are liable, which can be patented, protected, registered, those laws should be there in the countries. So after this signing of TRIPS agreement, India had to make the plant variety law, we had to amend our patent acts, we had to bring the geographical indications act. So it says that all countries are required to ensure protection of microorganisms, microbiological processes, plant varieties that meet the criteria of protection. That means whatever is protectable, those laws should be in place in the country. Then another agreement under WTO is the application of sanitary and phytosanitary matters. This is slightly different from IPPC because this is basically for foodborne. When we are trading food among countries, food items, grains, fruits, animal products, fishes, when they are going across borders, they should be having minimum standards so that you don't spread diseases and the life of humans and animals is not affected. So you have to have standards when you are exporting a material as a food item to other country. It should be also clean and having minimum standards, minimum of pesticides, all those things are governed by this SPS agreement of the WTO. Then coming to the protection of plant varieties, there is a union of protection of plant varieties. India is not a signatory to UPOV, but our plant variety protection law is based on the guidelines of UPOV. Okay, we are not a signatory to UPOV. There are reasons for it. We will discuss when we come to plant variety. Okay, so countries who are signatory to UPOV, they have to bring laws in conformity with the guidelines of the UPOV. And then there is another, this is an FAO global plan of action. Since FAO is responsible for the food security in the world, the UN, it's a UN organization. When the treaty or the other things were negotiated, there were many issues which countries had flagged at that time, that we are not sufficient in plant genetic resources, how to manage plant genetic resources, because when breeders are doing plant breeding, what do? They take many lines, they evaluate, they characterize, they use certain varieties for breeding, and the other things which may have good traits are just not being maintained by the breeders. They will just take out useful things and discard the other things. Okay, so but those are useful, we all know that. Germplasm, maintenance of germplasm is equally important as it is utilization. It's a resource intensive activity. You have to every year generate seed, or in the gene bank you have to maintain the gene bank. So this is a framework for maintaining genetic resources, how to manage your plant genetic resources. This was negotiated in 1996. It's only a framework, it is not legally binding, but it is a supporting component of the treaty, international treaty, because treaty also talks about PGRFA. So there are 4 set of activities in this global plan of action: in situ management, ex situ management, utilization, and capacity building. So basically 4 activities, set of activities are there, and all countries are not at the same level. Okay, we have a very advanced system of PGRFA. I must say that we are doing systematic collection of germplasm. We are systematically conserving in the gene bank, and whenever there is a shortfall in the gene bank, we bring out the material, multiply, and again keep it. So all countries are not at the same level. So this is a guideline, that means you can define your priority according to this, that now we have enough material in the gene bank, next thing would be how to make them more useful. So we go for large scale characterization. So that is our priority, to bring large scale and then if no more people are there to do, we have to enhance our capacity to do it. So though tomorrow, after some years, our priority would be capacity building. So it is a chain of things which we have to do. The other thing is in situ management. So we have a large ex situ collection, but we don't know what is happening in the in situ. Are we losing genes or wild species? So we have to at least make a inventory what is available in the country. So our priority would be to what wild species are in the country, and then do research to conserve them, and in situ also. So we have to maintain those eco-geographical regions where these species are thriving. So therefore this is an activity which will help us to manage our genetic resources in a better way. Then initially there was also when it was very easy to go to another country and collect germplasm. So this was a code of conduct for collecting germplasm, so that the collection remains at 2 or 3 places. So a collector who will collect will also share the germplasm with the original country and take some in another country, and maybe make a set available in the international repository. So this was also a non-legally binding, but it tells you how to handle collections from other countries. Then coming back to CBD, when we are talking of access and benefit sharing, when there was no guideline to how much it should be, there was no legal certainty, anybody could ask for anything, okay, and there was no certainty that yes, if you signed an agreement, whether you will come back and give me those benefit or not. So there was a need for negotiate a uniform standard for all the countries. This is what is called as the Nagoya Protocol, or the International Regime on Access and Benefit Sharing. So here they are telling you how to track your resources, where they are going, based on the PIC and MAT. There is a set of guidelines which tells you how to report back to a mechanism where if there is some discrepancy, if a country is not honoring your agreements. So those set of guidelines are there. There is an ABS clearing house mechanism in which all countries will put their processes. Like in India we have the biodiversity law. So our biodiversity law, what are the requirements of getting access, are put on this international website. So all countries will put their instruments on this website, and so we can, if we want to get material from any country, we want to know the process, we can go back to this website and check what is their process, who is the authority, we have to approach whom for getting material, what would be the range of benefits we have to give them. So this is an international regime of access and benefit sharing which will bring legal certainty. मतलब आपको पता होगा कि क्या करना है आपको. So these are the international regulations we were talking about, and then since they are all legally binding, how our laws are giving effect to these agreements. Okay. So first one we talked about CBD. To give effect to the CBD, we have the national law which is called as the Biological Diversity Act, which came in 2002. So objectives are just the same of the CBD: conservation and sustainable use, regulation of access to biological resources, sharing of benefits out of use of Indian biological resources, okay, and use of traditional knowledge. So the act says that all non-Indians will have to take prior approval before accessing germplasm. Okay, what does it mean? Well, who is a non-Indian? As per this act, any person who is not living in India is a non-Indian. Even an NRI is a non-Indian. And also it specifies the companies which are not registered in India, or a company, if it is registered in India, it has some foreign share either in their management or in the funds. So if a company is getting some foreign funds, as per this act it will be called as non-Indian. So all these people will be required, whether they are based in India, but as per the definition they are non-Indian, they will have to take permission from NBA before accessing any material. So if tomorrow anybody comes to you, what will you want to know from them? Whether you are a non-Indian entity or a non-Indian person. You cannot just give any material to anybody without knowing their status as per this act. It is unlawful. Okay. So we have seen that many companies or educational institutions will come to your universities and say that we will fund your research. You can bring this material to that country, do your research there. Can you do that? You have to take permission from NBA. Okay. Although for students the NBA has simplified the procedure. They say you just fill up a form, get an undertaking from your foreign PI, submit the documents to NBA, they will give you on priority approval. You can tell them that I have to go by this and this date, they will give you the approval. So for academic purposes, students can carry material except they have to take permission from NBA. Okay. Second thing, collaborative research projects. If they are signed between two governments, Government of India, Government of Japan, there is an agreement, that research material can go, provided you have to inform the NBA that this is a project which is approved by this government department. Under this project we are sending this material. There is a format to inform NBA for that. Okay. So collaborative research projects can do. Second thing, students can carry research material with them provided they take the permission from NBA. Except for collaborative projects, you just have to inform. So the other act, like after the WTO TRIPS, we have this Plant Variety Protection Act. This is a system for protection of plant varieties, farmers' rights, and the objectives are to ensure that farmers get the high quality seed. So new varieties which can be protected, there is a criteria, it should be new. New here does not mean a new technology, it means it should not have been sold in the market before 1 year from the development. It should be novel. Novel means it should be different from all the other varieties, distinct and stable. And when this act says that all the material which you are using for breeding a particular variety, you should have a proof that it is lawfully acquired. So you cannot just take anybody's material, develop a new variety, get it registered. You have to tell where did you get it, whether it was lawful or not. So when you get material from NBPGR, suppose you sign an MTA, so that is the lawful acquisition you have done. Or you take it from a farmer, you make an agreement that tomorrow if you develop a variety, whether you are going to share something with that farmer or not. So lawful acquisition is part of this PPFRA. Then Patent Acts, like I told you, it got amended because there were GMOs and other microorganisms. So microorganisms can be protected because if there is an inventive step involved, you identify a gene, you insert a gene, all those activities can give you a patent on microorganisms. But when you are patenting it, you have to inform the source of biological resource. So, and these resources must be deposited in the national designated repositories. After the TRIPS we also had the GI, geographical indications, which is also some of the land races or plant varieties, which are very typical to a region. It is specific to that region where the quality of that product is dependent on that region. So if you take out from there, grow it somewhere else, it will not have the same quality. The best example is Darjeeling tea. Nobody can sell any tea grown in any other part of the country as Darjeeling tea, because the Darjeeling area, the quality of tea is very much dependent on the quality. And internationally, the best example is Champagne. Grapes grown in the Champagne district of France only can be called as champagne. No other liquor, no other kind of wine can be called as champagne. Okay, so this is the act says that the name of that variety or that product cannot be used by any other person if you have a GI on that. Okay, so even Kangra tea is protected now. Kangra tea, even some artifacts like the Kullu shawl, so it can be either a product or agriculture product or any other product which is only from that area, and people have the knowledge about it. So it is not an individual right, it can be only given to a community. So all the community which is producing that or association of tea growers will get that tag of GI. Okay, Banarsi, Mysore silk, Mysore sandal work, all these are GIs. Some of the cardamom varieties of Kerala, they are turmeric. Turmeric I am not sure. Kolhapuri chappal is also there.
राजस्थान की कसूरी मेथी.
हाँ, कसूरी मेथी है. बोरो राइस है. Many examples are there. So you are aware of this. Now after the IPPC, we had the Plant Quarantine Act, which is about how we import a plant material, what are the conditions of import. That means there are schedules given in this act. I think somebody will be talking to you in detail about this act. Basically, when we import a material, there are two basic requirements: import permit and phytosanitary certificate. So import permit is given for research, it is given by NBPGR. Director is authorized as per this act. It's a given responsibility. So as per this act, there are certain schedules given. One schedule defines that from such and such country this material cannot be imported, or if imported, there are conditions under what they should be additionally declared from certain diseases which are not occurring in the country. And third would be who will do the quarantine examination after it is imported. So all these conditions are put in the import permit itself, so that the other country who is sending the material has to follow those instructions. Then this is about the GMOs I told you, because we are signatory to the Cartagena protocol. How we import, when we import, there has to be a clearance from RCGM, the body which clears all the GMOs for the country, and how it will be handled after it is coming into the country. So I think this is the last slide. I would like to have questions and clarifications if you want any clarification. I mean, you should be asking questions. If everything is clear, then my job is done.
Ma'am, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Number of samples varieties we are registered in GI till date.
Yes. Number of. You can get the data on the GI website. I am not sure of the numbers, but agriculture products are more than 100 now. Agriculture products itself. This Allahabad guava, Nagpur orange, Malihabadi mango, hill banana of Karnataka, all these things are GI registered. And it's a continuous right. After 10 years you can renew it. And if you don't renew it, then you lose that right. And you also you have to pay collectively for that right. You will get a specific tag, and anybody who is misusing that can be prosecuted under the law.
मैम ये ट्रिप्स और WTO में क्या मतलब इसको
TRIPS is an agreement which is under the purview of WTO. WTO is trade between different countries. So when we are trading things, we have to ensure that our protected material is given same respect in the other country which is. So if you are exporting, supposing you make a toothpaste, which is a patented item, and you sell it to another country. So nobody should be able to copy your product in that country. Otherwise तो आपको patent ही lose हो जाएगा ना. तो आपके country में भी law होने चाहिए, exporting country के भी law होने चाहिए, so that both are saved from misuse of that material. Although patent is a jurisdictional right, see, it is, but the WTO TRIPS says that if the other country does not have patent law, so your material can be misused there. So that ensures that also a country also protects your material and you protect their material, because it is somehow going to affect the trade.
And like we have listened so many disputes of rice in America, that they have patented basmati rice of India, and India is fighting the case that the rice is of
that case is far over. They had used a name which was similar to basmati. They had called it Texmati. It has the similar qualities. So India has to prove that it is their material. So at that time, when we didn't have this much of patent, and not much awareness, we didn't have a documentary proof. So we had to collect lot of information from many sources to claim that it is our material. So for that purpose, there was a project sponsored by Government of India, in which we have documented all the traditional knowledge, like all our traditional medicines, other systems of medicine, Unani, Siddha. There are scriptures, Sanskrit mein, Arabic mein, all those were translated into English and put on a website which was only available to the patent offices across the world. So if somebody is using say a plant from India which is documented that it is a medicine for this purpose, they will not give them patent. Okay, so that effort we had to make to at least bring that information in the public domain, so that anybody can see that yes, it is documented. Because it was in ancient languages or other languages, the other countries could not understand that it is a documentary proof. So we have to make it translate into English, make it available to the patent offices. And because of that, we have been able to stop many patents. But now, as per this act, National Biodiversity Authority is the agency who can fight patents on behalf of the country in any other country. And yeah.
Suppose I patent a microorganism and I found a mutant in a different geographical location. Will I have the right over the mutant?
No. Because you don't have to, you cannot demonstrate an inventive step into that. It is not your creation. It is something occurring in nature. It's different because you are yourself calling it as a mutant. Even if it is a mutant form of that, you have not done it.
So we would like to thank Dr. Brahmi for her lecture, and I hope you've learnt a lot of new things today from her. As a token of our appreciation from the CAST team, we would like to present her with a small memento.